Section 1. The highest court in the land. Why the Supreme Court matters. The Supreme Court is the final authority on U.S. law, shaping the lives of Americans for generations. With 9 justices appointed for life, the court interprets the Constitution and decides if laws are constitutional. Its rulings can redefine freedoms, civil rights, and the balance of power between government and citizens. Decisions on issues like healthcare, voting rights, and free speech have transformed the nation. Because justices serve for life, their influence outlasts the presidents who appoint them, and the court's direction can shift slowly over decades. A single Supreme Court ruling can change everything for ordinary people. From marriage rights to workplace protections, the court's decisions are closely watched, especially on divisive issues like gun rights. The Second Amendment, protecting the right to bear arms, is one of the most debated parts of American law. Supreme Court rulings on gun rights directly affect how states regulate firearms, who can own them, and where they can be carried. Each decision sets a new national standard, forcing lawmakers to adapt. When the Supreme Court speaks, the nation listens. Its decisions shape the meaning of freedom and justice in America. Section 2. A surprising unanimity. The court's shocking 9-0 ruling explained. In a rare move, the Supreme Court unanimously struck down a federal law banning regular cannabis users from owning firearms. Both conservative and liberal justices agreed. A blanket ban, without evidence of danger, doesn't fit America's historical tradition of gun regulation. The case, U.S. vs. Himani, involved a man charged for possessing a gun while using marijuana, legal in many states. The court ruled that simply using cannabis doesn't make someone too dangerous to own a gun. They distinguished between private, lawful use and being actively intoxicated or a public menace. This decision challenges the federal government's long-standing policy and forces a rethinking of who can be barred from gun ownership. The justices made clear, the government must show a real link to danger, not just substance use. This ruling raises the bar for disarming citizens and signals a major shift in how personal choices intersect with constitutional rights. It sets the stage for future legal challenges to other firearm regulations. Section 3. At the heart of the matter, the Hawaii law and the cannabis conundrum. 2 major gun rights cases recently reached the Supreme Court, testing the Second Amendment in modern times. The Hawaii case challenged a law that banned carrying concealed weapons on most private property, open to the public unless owners posted signs allowing guns. Gun rights advocates argued this created a near-total ban on carrying firearms for self-defense outside the home. The Supreme Court needed to clarify how states can regulate guns on public-facing private property, balancing property rights and self-defense. The second case, U.S. vs. Himani, confronted the conflict between federal drug laws and the Second Amendment. With many states legalizing marijuana, millions of Americans faced a paradox following state law but breaking federal law if they owned a gun. The Himani case forced the court to address whether cannabis use alone justifies a federal gun ban. The court sided with Himani, prioritizing individual rights over broad federal prohibitions. This resolved a major legal contradiction and set a new standard for gun rights and cannabis users. Section 4. The argument for control, public safety and historical precedent. Supporters of stricter gun laws argue that government must protect citizens from gun violence, justifying reasonable limits on gun ownership. In Hawaii, officials said allowing guns in crowded public spaces increases risks, and that property owners should control whether guns are allowed. They cited 19th-century laws restricting firearms in populated areas as historical precedent for regulation. In the Himani case, the government argued that history supports disarming those deemed irresponsible, like habitual drunkards. Proponents believe rights must be balanced with public safety, and that banning gun ownership for drug users was a sensible safeguard. They worry that striking down such laws could make it harder to prevent gun violence. For them, robust regulation is essential to protect communities in a complex society. On the other side are defenders of the Second Amendment, who see gun ownership as a core personal liberty. They argue that laws like Hawaii's and the federal cannabis ban are government overreach, infringing on the right to self-defense. Requiring property owners to opt in for guns, they say, effectively creates gun-free zones and leaves citizens defenseless. They believe the government should only disarm individuals based on clear evidence of danger, not broad categories or lifestyle choices. In Imani, they argued that responsible cannabis users shouldn't be treated like dangerous felons. They point out there's no historical precedent for disarming people based on non-violent, legal conduct. For gun rights advocates, the unanimous ruling is a necessary correction, reaffirming individual liberty and limiting government power. They see it as a victory for freedom and a reminder that the government must prove real danger before restricting rights. The Supreme Court's decision has immediate, real-world effects for millions of Americans. For example, a veteran using medical marijuana for pain or PTSD no longer has to choose between treatment and gun ownership. Nearly 1 in 5 Americans use marijuana. Many were unknowingly federal felons if they owned guns. The ruling removes this risk, aligning federal law with state legalization and modern realities. It's a landmark victory for gun owners who felt their rights were eroded by arbitrary regulations. The decision reinforces the principle that the government must prove danger before disarming citizens. However, some fear the ruling will make communities less safe, especially in high-crime areas. For them, the decision feels like it prioritizes individual rights over public safety. The ruling's impact will be felt differently across communities, highlighting the deep emotions and stakes on both sides. It's a reminder that Supreme Court decisions touch lives in complex, personal ways. The Supreme Court's decision clarifies federal law but opens new legal battles at the state level. America's gun laws already vary widely by state, from strict in California to permissive in Texas. States with tough gun laws must now review their statutes to comply with the court's new standard. Gun rights groups will likely challenge a range of state and local laws, from bans on gun ownership for other substance users to waiting periods. State attorneys general will defend their laws, leading to a wave of litigation and uncertainty. The Hawaii case, sent back to lower courts, leaves questions about regulating guns on public-facing private property unresolved. The nation will remain a patchwork of laws and beliefs, with gun rights changing dramatically across state lines. This legal fragmentation reflects America's deep social and political divisions over firearms. Looking ahead, the Supreme Court's unanimous ruling will reshape the American gun debate for years. Millions of cannabis users who own guns are freed from legal limbo, and federal agencies must revise their regulations. The ruling forces lawmakers to move from broad bans to more nuanced, risk-based approaches. It sets a precedent that will influence all future Second Amendment cases, making new gun control measures harder to enact. The decision could spark challenges to other restrictions, like age limits or ammunition bans. Politically, the ruling will intensify the already polarized gun debate, shifting more battles to the courts and states. Elections may increasingly focus on how to respond to the court's evolving Second Amendment standards. The ruling clarifies one issue but raises new questions about responsible gun ownership and public safety. As society changes, so will the interpretation of foundational laws. This decision is a major milestone in America's ongoing struggle to balance individual rights and collective safety.